Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Around the Payload. I am your host, the Blevins, and we have a great show for you today. A nice ragtag group of not newcomers, of seasoned pros at Around the Payload, and one newcomer. We've got one newcomer here, but we will be introducing them momentarily. Just as a little forward here to this episode. This episode goes out to the memory of the fallen episode 23.5. May it rest in peace. There's really nothing more that can be said about that. It's gone. It exploded. It literally exploded. Yeah. So if you guys are new to Around the Payload, this is a show about Overwatch, Overwatch League, competitive Overwatch, all sorts of stuff, and it's a awesome game show where we're going to be doling out points. As you can see, everyone has the points next to their names. You're going to see the points go up and down. You're going to hear sounds that sound kind of like that. That's not your Overwatch game. Left on in the background, that is Kyle gaining 1,000,000 points before he gets second place. But without further ado, let me introduce our wonderful hosts today. In the top left, we have Melarina, the ruler, the self-proclaimed ruler of Deathblow. Welcome back.
No. Just ruler. Yes.
Okay.
I'll take it.
Proclaimed by everyone, I suppose. Welcome
Well,
back.
thank you for having me back.
Always. To the top right, we have Overwatch journalist, analyst, Chinese Overwatch expert, and the lover of shy. That, of course, is Volamel.
Hello. Welcome to the China House. We're here to teach.
I feel like Volamel is not going to give any answers to questions. He's just going to be saying a number of
Chinese. Exactly.
Volamelian proverbs.
I
In
like that word.
There you go.
Volamelian.
There you go. You can have that one for free, buddy. In the bottom right, we have the newcomer. That is the Team Brazil fanboy and also the founder of BroadcastGG. Yeah, that little thing that they do everything. BroadcastGG. That, of course, is Mushu Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Super excited. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be super fun. And last, but certainly not least, but also maybe certainly not first place. I don't know. We'll see. We have the host of the Blackwatch Report and the eternal podcast invader. That is KyleWynn.
Yeah, I've been on basically like half of all hiding productions this last month, and I'm gonna keep it going.
I think you may have like overreached your quota, and the High Noon Productions gods were like, Kyle's been on too many things. We're shutting this one down, and just hit the big red button in the middle of last episode. But let's try to get this episode done before that maybe happens again. So we will be cruising right along as we go into round number 1.
Round 1, capture the objective.
So, with all the new teams coming out, the expansion teams, we've had a lot of discussion about a lot of different things about the expansion teams. But the GM of the Boston Uprising, Huck, had a tweet to say about the Canadian teams. He says, "I'll be so disappointed if both Canadian OWL teams are Korean. Maybe I'm biased, but I feel like Canada has a lot of talent. And it would be a big letdown, at least to me personally." We've seen this, I don't know if I even want to call it an argument, this line of thought being said pretty much since Overwatch was announced as a competitive title. I just want to kind of get your guys' thoughts. Mel, what do you think? Is this even a reasonable line of thinking, or have we kind of moved past this with the Overwatch League?
I'd like to say we've moved past it. I don't think we have, but I think we should. I mean, if you look at the Korean talent is huge, and there's minimal representation in Korea of Overwatch League teams. So you look at that and it's like, okay, so what, now everybody is going to go the Overwatch World Cup route where you have to take regional players? Like, it's a regionalized system, but it's not, you have to pick players from that region. So I think that it's ridiculous to think that they shouldn't just take the best players out there. The problem you encounter is that you have you struggle to incorporate Korean players with American players or Canadian players because of the language barrier.
Yep.
So lots of people are leaning more towards all Korean teams or all Western teams. And I don't think that's wrong, but I think if we just kind of closed the door on the Korean players because we're like, oh no, we need to get more Canadian players in. We've got a lot of talent here. We're decreasing the interest in Korea, which makes it less likely for them to invest and buy into teams next year in AL, which is what we need.
Right.
So I think it's ridiculous to think that the Western teams shouldn't buy the Korean players because there's no Korean teams.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. Vama, what are you thinking? Is this even really worth talking about? I don't know.
I definitely understand a lot of what the players have kind of come out and said, but I don't necessarily personally agree with that. But I'll play kind of devil's advocate and kind of argue for the players because they do feel slighted in a very loose sense that, you know, teams aren't necessarily looking elsewhere outside of Korea. They're really not, you know, trying to scout within, you know, a Western region. And I think that, you know, Western players do provide something that teams can definitely market and use. And, you know, it then becomes a question of competition. Like, are you, you know, leaning more towards an entertainment business, or are you going to be competitive in the league? That being said, no, I don't personally align with this kind of thinking. I think that if if your goal is to be competitive and if your goal is to win, I think that you should take the best players possible. And if that just happens to be the case, then so be it. But that's just my line of thinking. I think it's important to understand that, you know, there are some people who can't necessarily identify with, you know, a Korean's, you know, somebody who is different. And I get that that's, you know, you look at like London, for example, there was a big outcry, you know, with there wasn't a lot of representation, and they've kind of echoed that sentiment with their academy team. But there is a little bit of a disconnect. I understand that, but me personally, I think it's fine to have Koreans as long as you market them well. I think it's fine.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Mushu, I want to get your thoughts here. What are you thinking about Huck's comments?
I think the best players in general. And so just kind of what we've seen with League of Legends is that whenever the teams go to Worlds is when they find out that China and Korea are just better than them, right? And that just happens every time at Worlds, and the teams don't really get many chances to play against the top players in the entire world. And so that's why MSI, like the mid-season international, or the mid-season invitational, I think they call it, as well as the finals, are so huge for NA and EU and just Western teams and just other teams who are trying to contend to be the top players. And so with Overwatch League the way it is, with the Korean players distributed throughout, I think it's definitely a much better spot than with what we've seen in other esports where, you know, Korean and Chinese players tend to dominate.
Makes a lot of sense there. Yeah, it's really a tough line to walk. But Kyle, last words here. What are you thinking about Huck's tweet?
I feel like if both Canadian teams were 100% Korean rosters, I don't see there's anything wrong with that. I think where the main issue comes is when rosters don't try to kind of engage with their fan base. And it seems like my two favorite teams to compare and contrast with this idea is Nixel and London, who NYXL has a phenomenal fan base. It seems like the people who went to the pop-up store, were absolutely completely dedicated fans. The roster is really, really good at being, they're just sociable people. Sabiolbi is hilarious. So is Pine. They're just fun players to look at. on their streams and stuff like that. But it seems like London, on the other hand, just don't seem that engaged with their community as much. And so I don't think there's anything necessarily like, I don't think that having a full Korean roster means you're going to have a disconnected team. It's all about how the GM and their, head of social media and all that kind of stuff integrates that roster with their local demographic. And I think that like I do echo this idea that like just picking up a Korean roster because it's the easy, like most guaranteed thing is lazy scouting. And I find it less impressive if a team wins like London Spitfire than if Boston would have won, because London made a lot with a lot, whereas Boston made a lot with so little to start. And it's just a better storyline, honestly.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Yeah, a lot of good
You
points there.
obviously haven't seen the London video where they read about fan comments, have you?
I watched the first half of it.
Okay, it was hilarious.
Yeah, the only thing, I mean, I don't know how much London would have marketed their players, like regardless of where they're from. I don't know if their lack of marketing was because of the players' regionality or not. But all right, let's move on to the next question here. This one has been kind of a dicey subject, but we heard it all starts with this guy. May have heard of him, named Kai. He moved from, originally was on the Dallas Fuel as the head coach, then he moved over to Houston Outlaws, and then there was some rumors and talkings about him being working with Vancouver or DC. There was like pretty much anything under the sun was heard, and now the newest hot goss is that maybe he won't be working on the teams that he was rumored to before. So let's just boil this down. Regardless of any of the rumors or drama behind the scene, Volamel, we'll start with you. Does Kai does he have the chops to be a GM or a coach or be working in some form in the Overwatch League?
So I think this is more of a very more, it's a bigger question than I think people are giving it credit to, and I think giving Kai credit. I think esports as a scene is fairly young. So you don't have, especially in Overwatch, you don't have a ton of time to even build a list of credentials. And if anybody has, I believe it's him. Whether you like him or not, whether you like whatever your opinion on him is, right? I think that he's worked with players for, as long as anybody could in Overwatch. And that speaks to his ability to either sell himself or his intelligence. So again, if anybody has the credentials, I believe Kai is probably amongst the top kind of percentage. And I think he's worked with a lot of players. He's worked with a lot of very successful teams. He's seen what works, what doesn't. If again, I was to consult anybody and really kind of question, I think if he was on the market, he'd be definitely up there for me, at least. For a GM, it's a little bit harder of a sell for me. But as a coach or, an assistant coach or some form of coaching staff member, I think, yeah, he'd be a very important member.
Yeah, definitely has the resume in Overwatch, more so than, like you said, almost anyone. Mushu, what do you think? Are we going to see Kai in season 2?
So this one I'm gonna take the easy way out or the coward's way out, because I think on this side, like with Kai, like I haven't been super in touch with just the drama on this side, but what I will say is that I definitely respect like the grind, and that I know he's been around, and that's like as someone who I'm also like extremely new, all things considered, to the esports scene. Like I started doing shoutcasting like 2 years ago, and started doing it more seriously like a year ago, and there's still so much that I have no idea about. But what I do know and what I really appreciate in people is when I see their when they have really good character. And so it takes like a lot of seeing kind of their trajectory over time and seeing what they're doing and their motivations and why they're doing it. I don't have that read on Kai. I've only heard from what other people have said, and I don't like that in terms of, for me, forming an opinion on it. So this for me is TBD. I'd love to hear just more player interactions with him. Obviously, it comes down to how the players work with him. I think that's most important, right? And then just like being able to maintain relationships with the higher ups and explaining to them the things that they won't see because they're not the boots on the ground, right? And that's the job of the general manager, is to be that voice and really understand and have a good sense of what your players need, but then also be able to communicate it with the people above you. So, but for this question, I can't really say.
Makes sense. Fair answer for sure. Kyle, what are you thinking? Do you have a more I don't know, jagged opinion of Kai one way or the other?
It's kind of difficult for me because I do have like I recognize a little bit of name bias because there's very few Kyles in esports, and so there's a bit of that. There's a bit of the old C9 bias as well, but as well, like, I don't know, I feel like the Dallas thing will forever leave his name somewhat tainted, and no matter how much fantastic work he does with Houston or whatever possible new team, he will always have that kind of spot on his resume that, like, there were certain things with this roster that he did not do well. And if he learned from that, if he is able to, be a mature individual and say, I messed up there, I made some mistakes, but I recognize that and I know I'm not going to make them again, then I think 100% he deserves to be a general manager. I think it's probably more fitting in his role. I don't think he's got necessarily like the right head coach mentality that like someone like Arrow does. But I do think he has a phenomenal amount of game knowledge, and he has shown that in the creative strats that he has given to both Dallas and Houston. But I think that just that leadership mentality maybe wasn't there for him as a coach, and maybe that's what he needs as a GM to build an expansion team.
Makes a lot of sense there as well. Mel, last words here. I know you, Kai worked with a team that you are very fond of, so maybe I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, he didn't work with them stage 1, and that was their last glory days. So, he didn't really turn us around. I think the thing with Kai is that I think Kai's gotten a bad name. Like you guys have said, that he's gotten a bad reputation. But at the same time, a lot of that was out of Kai's hands, and we'll never know the full story there. And I do think that he has proven himself in the past that he can be a good coach. And I think it just shows that he wasn't the leader that they needed. I don't think he should be a GM because he couldn't handle the situations happening on Dallas. Now, who could, right? And everybody says, yeah, Arrow came in and fixed it. Okay, but XQC was already gone. They had gotten Custa, who's a great leader. So like things were already looking better. They just needed somebody to coach them in how to play at that point. I think what Kai struggled with was all the drama and how to get these players to stop messing around on the side and stop getting suspended and stop throwing things away and just play the game. I think if players are willing to play the game and behind him, he can coach them. I don't think that's ever in question, but I do think him being an assistant coach is probably the only way that he's going to get that name back and be able to come back in. I don't think he's lost forever. I think he still has time to regain some, glory days, but not right away.
Yeah, there's one thing we know about the Overwatch League and esports community is that they tend to forget things very fast unless those things are bad, in which case they remember forever. So who knows? We'll see. My bet would be that we definitely, I don't know if I could say definitely about anything, that we probably will see Kai in some capacity in season 2, but it's yet to be seen. Let's move on here. The last question here in round number 1, and this one is hot off the presses. Hot off the presses. I think we got this announcement like 10 minutes before we went live here. And that is, of course, that Dante from the San Francisco Shock is now been traded to the Houston Outlaws. So the Houston Outlaws finally have a Tracer player that actually would consider themselves a Tracer player. So, Mooshu, we'll start with you. How good is Houston now that they actually have that one role that they were very glaringly missing in the beginning of Overwatch League?
I'm really excited for the Houston Outlaws now. I think for Dante, what this is really going to help mostly is going to be Linkser. I think, and I would love to hear Volam's thoughts on this too, because going into season 1, there's so much talk about Fleta, right? And Fleta being MVP of season 1, right? And he was huge in stage 1. And I think what ended up happening was people saw that like you just focus Fleta and beat Seoul, right? Especially since the rest of their roles they're trying to figure out, like, do we have Miro in? Where is Rouge Hong in? Is he Rouge support Hong, or is he Rouge Kong? And so I think with the Outlaws, I see that same kind of spark of how versatile of a DPS Linkser is, and the same with that Flood was. I don't know why I necessarily felt like I need to bring up Flood. I just feel like they're both, in terms of how the teams played around them, they're most similar in my opinion. So so Dante coming in is going to be really interesting, because like we have to wonder, is Tracer going to be in the meta? So what I'm really looking forward to is seeing how Dante plays, and if he will play at all in the World Cup this weekend, because he's on the Team Netherlands, and so he's listed as a sub officially. But I would love to see him play, especially now since Tracer would be would be very much a pocket pick. There's definitely a lot of other heroes that you need to be able to play, and so seeing the versatility of Dante is going to be most important for me going into seeing, just projecting how well Houston's going to be in stage 2.
Yeah, makes sense. Tracer is not nearly the mainstay, or at least we're not predicting her to be that she was in the beginning of the first few stages of Overwatch League. Kyle, what do you think? Is Houston top tier now?
It really depends on Linkser, interestingly enough. I assume it's Linkser who's going to play instead of Jake in that second spot, because Dante on Sombra is a fantastic, combination. I think that he's one of the best in the league, I would argue. I don't know how well that is with the newest changes and if he's adapted to the new playstyle and all that kind of stuff. But I think that whether or not Houston is top tier depends on how flexible Linkser will be, because it seems like most teams are running Sombra almost permanently. And that'll put a lot of extra weight onto Linkser on that opposite side, and how he and the rest of the team can kind of play those additional heroes. I think that with Ana coming in too, they're better. I think that overall they have definitely leveled up, because they don't have to rely on the whole Tracer thing anymore. Or, Mercy, same thing. Hoping they figure out what the heck to do with Boink and Bonnie. That's a weird combination as well, to just have Bonnie play Lucio and then still have Boink. Anyways, yeah, I think Dante's like a perfect fit here, because you would have had to force Jake to play Sombra as well, and Jake doesn't pick up heroes as quickly as others do.
Fair point. Mel, your team finally has a Tracer. What do you think? Are they god tier now?
Yeah, just like my team to really get a Tracer as soon as she goes out of meta, right? Like, come on, guys. What are you doing? No, but I do think Sombra is very much so in the meta right now. And who knows where we'll be when season 2 starts, right? We definitely don't want to be where we were when Tracer was in must pick. So we covered that base. And I think that it gives us a lot more flexibility. I think that Dante doesn't replace Jake. I think Dante makes the team a little bit more well-rounded, right? It's not that Dante and Jake don't have overlapping hero pools like Sinatra and Dante did, which was the problem. Dante wasn't going to outperform Sinatra in that role, but he was still better than most other people, right? And so I think bringing him in allows him to come in when some of those players are needed. Jake's still probably going to play the Junkrat and some other characters if they're needed on a map. And then I think Linkser is probably the mainstay in that group of people. But yeah, I mean, I am excited to see what it comes. I think his personality fits with the Outlaws team. I think we'll see a good fit there. I'm hoping that it makes them, number 1.
Well, I mean, I'm not personally hoping for that to happen, but I hope that you are happy with how the season goes when Toronto wins. Volamel, last words here on Dante going to Houston.
So 2 major points. I think it's been brought up, but Sombra is very, very important in the metagame right now. The other hero that is kind of being thrown around quite a bit, that isn't as much of a mainstay, is Doomfist. And we have to raise the question, does Houston have a Doomfist if this is going to be the metagame leading into season 2, or at least specifically the preseason? That kind of remains to be seen. I wouldn't imagine that someone between the DPS pool that Houston has, and we'll get into my next point. I'm sure somebody can play it along with Dante. But to jump into that other point, we're kind of forgetting a DPS player that has been kind of added late And someone who I haven't been the most thrilled with is Arhan, the Korean Genji player, who, you know, with as much criticism as he gets, he isn't, at least statistically, and I think for the most part, he has a very distinct play style. But for the most part, he actually fills out a similar role that Dante does. So adding Dante, having Arhan, having Jake to have those pocket picks as well, probably leaning more on the soldier and projectile role, and then having Linkster to kind of fill out the rest of it does make this team very meta-proof. So it is a really nice addition. But again, you still kind of run into that same issue that Houston has always had, is that they don't their players are very they have very flexible bench, but they don't all have different hero pools, if that makes sense. So it was the same issue that they had with their flex tank, where it was like, okay, if we put this player in, we're favoring a strategy that kind of aims towards a diva, or if we put in this player, you know, Cool Matt, he's going to play diva, right? Or Zarya, if we put in, you know, it's an issue that I think Houston has had overall, and it doesn't solve that issue, but it definitely makes them more meta-proof in the future.
Yeah, I think at the very least, Houston is going to be able to compete in more scenarios than they were able to at the beginning. So definitely a lot of good points there, and I'll call out the elephant in the room. Mushu had a little bit of a beef, pun intended. It's okay, Twitch chat. +5 points for you, Twitch chat, when you come on next time.
Take it.
It's okay. Don't
take the tax. Take it away.
Well, okay, fine.
I don't even know what my points are anymore.
We'll cut you 1 point. It's okay. Twitch chat stole a point from you, Mushu, so you can always hold a grudge against them no matter what. But that is going to bring us to the end of round number 1, and let's just do a real quick score recap for the podcast listeners. We have a clear first place right now with Melarina at 21 and the rest of the pack tied at 20. So Mushu, if you lose by 1 point, Twitch chat may have gotten you. It's okay. But we will see, as it is still anyone's game as we move into round number 2.
Round 2. Capture the objective.
So last weekend we had another stage of the Overwatch World Cup. We saw China and Australia making it out of this group stage, and moving and advancing on to BlizzCon. Not necessarily the biggest surprise in the world, as both of those teams are quite good and have made BlizzCon before, I believe. I know Australia has. I'm pretty sure China has. Okay, I'm getting the nod from Volamel. So yes, both those teams have made BlizzCon before, but the biggest, I think, surprise from the weekend was Sweden not making it to BlizzCon this year for the first time. So Kyle, we'll start with you. How big of a surprise is this year for Sweden not to make BlizzCon?
I don't know. I could kind of see it coming. I thought Sweden was pretty good, but there were a lot of issues with that team. You had Reinforce, who's a fantastic main tank, but he has been out of the competitive world for quite a while, and that'll do something to you. You had Sharp in that that hit scan role, and he wasn't like, he's a really phenomenal tracer, but he didn't have the opportunity to play much tracer, and his Widow is still like catching up. He had to play quite a lot of Sombra, which he didn't look too comfortable on. I think that's part of it. I think Tavik is also just being on a not good team for so long and having so many issues is probably doing something to his competitive edge. He hasn't looked as incredible either. Chips High-End, same thing. I love the dude, but they played a weird amount of like Moira, considering Chips was like one of the best Annas when Anna was good for the first time. To see him not taking that opportunity to play one of his better heroes was a bit of a weird thing for me. And they were just odd decision making. I feel like it wasn't entirely just on play, but in strategy as well, that the team kind of let themselves down in the World Cup stage.
Yeah, definitely seemed like a different level than we've seen on some of the other teams. Mel, what are your thoughts? This is going to be the first World Cup that my boy Tavik, aka the Plupster, is not in. I'm not going to be seeing him at BlizzCon this year. I'm so upset. What are you thinking about this?
Well, I don't think it was Tavik's fault, but I do think there's a reason that there's a lot of non-Overwatch League players now on the team, right? We've got Zebasai, IDDQD, we've got Swoosh, Chips. They're all looking for teams, right? They were all dropped. You put a bunch of people that just got the news that they're not moving forward with their new team. You put them together on a team, and you've got Reinforce, who's really trying to get back into the competitive scene. And I think that they just couldn't pull everything together. I think there was too much else going on in their lives. And I think that China had a lot to prove. China was represented by Shanghai the entire season, who didn't win a single game. So everybody's thoughts are China sucks, right? At Overwatch. And they're here to prove that they don't. And I think that they did that, and they'll continue to do that. And I think Sweden just fell short.
Definitely. Well, I know at the very least one person who doesn't think China sucks, and that, of course, is you, Volamel. What are you thinking? Was this an expected result for China Australia to get through and Sweden not to?
Expected, maybe a little bit strong for me. I thought Bangkok overall was probably the most competitive out of all of the World Cup qualifiers. I think people really sleep on Australia. They surprised me a lot last year, going as deep as they did. They looked very strong, and I couldn't really have pegged them higher than a dark horse for me. And coming into this, I thought they were pretty much a shoo-in, just from last year's competitiveness alone, with, again, how deep they went. China, I love them to death, but there were some issues that I saw. They have a tank line that has never worked together, a flex tank that is maybe a little bit past his prime. Maybe he's peaked and is kind of plateauing and has some positional issues. And then you've got Denmark, who was kind of my dark horse along with Sweden. Got a lot of talent, got a lot of really good players, but there can only be two. Who really gets it out? And it really, for me, Sweden didn't make the cut. Again, a lot of historically good players, but no one that really has risen to the occasion recently. Again, not to beat a dead horse, but I wanted to see something out of Snillo or Sharp, but I really didn't see much else that I haven't already seen before. And other players have come out and said publicly, they kind of abused or leaned on the fact that they didn't want to play a ton of Widow, and that was kind of an issue. So I'm happy that China made it out, and I think Denmark really had a great performance. Gave China a run for their money. I was very surprised, and thank God we put Shax off of Widowmaker. We pushed him off.
For sure. Mushu, last words here on this last group for Overwatch World Cup and Sweden not making it.
I think for this group, I think it wasn't necessarily that people didn't think China would be good. I think just people didn't know what to think of China, because Chinese contenders wouldn't be something that people would watch unless you're crazy, and cast it and try to bring that and like really watch it, because you wouldn't have seen any of those players. That your other influences, of course, are just the Shanghai Dragons. So that was supposed to be the best team that China was supposed to be able to field. And I think it's generally agreed upon that the Shanghai Dragons roster at the time that it was made was absolutely not the best roster that could be made. And so you have that kind of perception, right? Of they're supposed to be the top. So why would contenders groom and bring out these players that are able to play so well as it is? And so I personally felt, and I know a lot of the folks who've done the broadcast with us, and some of those guys are in chat here, were like we already knew this, like, wow, no, just like gleeful delight at everyone discovering what how strong these players are, because we saw them each shine individually. And so when we saw the rosters themselves, it was just like, and saw them play over the contender season, it was like, all right, this all makes so much sense, but we had no idea how they would all play together. So seeing them come in and put together that kind of roster, especially like Crystal coming in at very specific points, specifically for projectile, like I just love the I don't know if it was necessary coaching or just whatever went to the decision making for who was playing when. So I mean, China's definitely able to rise to the occasion. So of course that, and then you combine it with in Australia, like you're not really gonna, again, you would only watch Australian contenders if for some reason you had a reason to. There's just so much Overwatch too, and so blank esports being the core roster, and then you add on Custa as a support, which I feel like if you're going to add on support into a roster, like support's where you're going to want to do it. And so there's just going to be these things where you don't know how to prepare for them. You don't know how they're going to play until it happens in person. And so yeah, I just love how we're now seeing that Overwatch League isn't the place where you're going to have necessarily the best players all together, right? Because half of the roster on Team Sweden were in Overwatch League, right? And so it's more about like the synergy and them playing to their strengths. And I think that's what the other teams did more, what Australia and China did more than necessarily like mitigating their weaknesses.
Yeah, for sure. I was to comment on what you said about the only people who are watching Australian contenders probably have some sort of sleeping disorder, if I had to guess. But just 'cause it's on at such a crazy time. But let's move on here and talk about this weekend's Overwatch World Cup stage. That, of course, includes United Kingdom, Poland, Italy, Germany, the Netherlands, and France. This is, of course, the Paris group. So this is, we've talked about before how this is kind of like open, not really any clear winners, at least to me. Mel, who do you see qualifying from this stage?
Sorry, my mic was muted. Well, oh, gosh, why do you have to make me first on this one? Okay, I say France and UK. And I've been out of town and I have zero reason to say that, but that's what I'm going to say. And I don't know
That's
if that's
fair
right,
enough.
but I think I'm going to be right there.
All right, France and UK. It is determined. Volamel, any other winners for you?
Let's kind of think through this. I think that both the UK and France have a chance to kind of sweeten out. I would wager that if anyone was to, I think it's going to be France. I think they, as much as, I like my French baguettes and whatnot. We haven't seen wins in a long time. And I think that's a very valid criticism, the same that we gave to Johnny, reinforce. The roster itself has played together, at least a lot of it has, and they, again, all speak the same language, and I've heard very good things, at least from them individually. But again, it's World Cup. Can they play even remotely as a team? It kind of remains to be seen for me. The UK have a lot of talent. Again, can they play together as a team? And then I'm looking at those two to either be really, really big hits or really, really big misses. And then you've got Germany and Netherlands probably as my two dark horse teams. Germany's got some definite old OGs and some talented players, and the same goes to the Netherlands. Facilities is the name that I've heard thrown around a lot, and Crusade from British Hurricane, very, very talented. But if I had to pick one, I'll say UK. I have to say France. I have to say UK, France, get it out.
All right, we've
Don't
got
just copy
two.
me.
See, there's your advantage. There's your advantage for going first. It doesn't matter. You don't lose points for copying unless it's on the final question, in which case you might. But Mushu, who are you following the trend here? Or do you have a?
Nah, I gotta break it, man. We gotta make it spicy, okay? I'm gonna say UK, Germany.
Ooh.
All right. So here's my thought here. So I think for France, I totally agree with what Volamel said. Is can they play together as a team? If I'm looking at their tank lineup, I think what's going to happen is I think Pogo is going to be a force regardless, right? But I think this team, in terms of their synergy, is going to come down to how does that tank line work? Because the big question mark I think really comes down to the supports. But then how does that kind of synergy work out between the tanks and supports? So that's what I'll be really watching for from Team France. But I'll say that I'm saying UK, Germany, and putting Germany in there a little bit to be spicy, but also just because I know that the team has been, or I saw that they were doing like a boot camp with, they're all together, and
Nice.
It's like in the same way that we've seen unknown, with trying to come together and being an unknown force and not knowing how exactly they're going to play. If I'm looking at the Germany roster, which I actually don't have up right now, but I know that Nesh is on there, and I know that there's a bunch of other players who have had a lot of contenders experience. So I think for this team, they're going to know exactly what game plan they have to go with, because they're going to work on very set plays, very set compositions, and I think they're going to do really well at those things. Whereas I would just be curious to see how much prep and effort are coming in from other teams that are coming together with just enormous amount of experience like Team France. So I think France versus Germany is going to be the match I really watch out for, because I really think coming into that, if I were to really, based on the information that I have now, make a guess for what I'm really looking for, is like how much will a really disciplined team that knows exactly how they want to win and will play towards their win conditions in Germany take on a team in France where I don't know what their prep looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they have just as much prep and just as much scrimming and are taking it just as seriously in how they approach it. But I have a feeling that they'll play a little bit more loose and then might be challenged a lot more than they expect.
So we have unanimous UK around the first three here, and then Mushu with the little spice picking Germany over France. I was hoping you were going to go with the spicy meatball with Italy, but Kyle, last words here. It would have made no sense whatsoever, but you probably would have gotten more points from me, just saying. Kyle, last words here on who do you think is going to make it out of this stage?
You know, last time I was on this show, when we tried to make predictions on who would win in the World Cup, and someone's like, "Oh, I believe in the smaller team." That smaller team got decimated by the two bigger teams. So when in doubt, go for the team that has the most notable talent, I would say. And so far, that seems to be UK and France, and that's not literally the only reason. France not only has like good talent or like notable talent, but they also have like really, really good players. People will joke about how AKM's, terrible Genji and stuff like that, but they also have Nico, who was always a pretty good Genji as well. They have Poco, who is absolutely ridiculous, and even if I think Kolsti is Ben Best is his tank duo, bud. Even if he's not on his A game, I feel like Poco can kind of like help him out in that aspect and kind of cover up any mistakes he makes. Obviously, bringing Wins in, who hasn't played in like a year, is a bit of a throw, but like at least Lucio's meta now to where he can just like bank on being a moderately good Lucio, and they will be fine. I really don't see how France could ever drop this. London or UK, I don't know. I used to be a huge fan of Mikey A, and then Tracer became unmeta, and now I'm like, where's the dude standing? They have a pretty good tank line. They have pretty good supports as well. I think, obviously, like their seriousness has always been a thing in question. There's always been issues with like this team not taking it 100% seriously, or always kind of memeing and joking around. But I think that the vibe around this World Cup is going to be a little bit more serious, and so I think that both of these teams are pretty dead set in, especially looking at the other teams. We don't have a team like Denmark who's got like absolutely phenomenal talent as being kind of this like extra team that'll really set things on its head. Poland doesn't have a lot of players that I've heard of. Same for Italy, same for Germany, same for Netherlands. There's maybe 2 contenders players on each of those teams. And I just don't see it. I really just don't. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, we have not seen the I guess non-contenders, non-Overwatch League player teams fare as well against those kind of higher echelon Overwatch League player-filled teams in the past. But I still think this one is up for grabs. Twitch chat is very spread on this one. There's really no consensus here in Twitch chat. So, well, this one I think honestly this might be the most interesting weekend for Overwatch World Cup that we've seen, where it's not kind of like decided. Besides, I guess last weekend too, but. Let's move on here and get to the last question here in round number 2. And let me just preface this because people were already asking me about this before the episode. People were tweeting about it because it came up. There are rumors, there are whisperings and musings that he who shall not be named on Around the Payload, aka Defran, is potentially coming back. And look how Kyle's gone. Kyle can't even take it. May is the rumor is that he's currently looking for tryouts with some contenders teams and some tier 2 teams. Take it for whatever it's worth, having it come from the rumor cycles and the leaks or whatever you want to call them. Nothing confirmed yet, but Volamel, what do you think? Is Defran back in the real competitive scene?
Well, that's a very difficult question to unpack. Is he? I'm not sure. I can speculate on whether I like that or not, and
Sure.
I think I do. I think he's one of the kind of the sad tragedies that, you know, he just kind of imploded for whatever reason, whether it be, you know, stress or maybe he just, you know, was a little bit a brash, we'll say. Maybe we'll go with that word. Being a little bit brash definitely rubs people the wrong way, and being, you know, a little rude definitely doesn't help yourself. But I don't think anybody's denying that this kid was probably one of, if not the best Western hit scans. You know, very, very talented player. If he can kind of make a redemption arc, and, you know, I think that would be a really, really cool story. I think, you know, pairing himself well with a more authoritative and a coach that's more driven on guidance and kind of forming players. I would love to see him kind of work with Packing 10, the coach of Angry Titans. I think that, you know, having someone who's been formerly in the military kind of take him under his wing and kind of guide him would be a really powerful tool for him. And I hope to see him do really well. I hope that he kind of cleans his image up, and, you know, I would love to see him succeed. So best of luck to Defran, if he is.
Yeah, it would be interesting, and we'd have to give full immunity to all Around the Payload contestants because they'd just be forced to talk about him. So we'd have to find a new person to fill that in. But Mushu, what do you think? Do you want to see Defran? Are we gonna see Defran? What are you thinking?
I want to. What I would say is that if I think back to just the parallels here for traditional sports, there's so many stories of players that they get into it, they're hot shots, and then they forget what their focus should be on. They get a bit ahead of themselves, right? And I think that's for whatever reasons that we don't or aren't privy to for how Defran went away, and why that happened. Like, I think there's definitely, you can see a tone shift in his tone. And now if he is honestly looking for spots on trials teams, I think that's probably the best spot to go, is where it's, sorry, not trials, but academy teams, where it's like the idea is that you're in an org and you're positioning yourself to be respected and show that you're going to put in the work and show that you have the right mindset. And I think the best place to prove that in a very low, like a low risk, high reward way for an organization is on their academy team, because of how, you know, fluid it can be, and just in terms of the, I'm sure there's different, are there certain things that are mandated for academy teams for signing players and contracts and whatnot? I'm sure it's more loose than it is for Overwatch League, right? And so I think I could totally see him landing on an academy team, and depending on how well he plays, and then probably more importantly, I guess obviously, like, he has to be able to play well and be able to say and show that he is Overwatch League caliber in terms of his skill, but then probably more importantly is how he conducts himself behind the scenes. So I'm really looking forward to it. I would love to see this, you know, story of Defran returning to or getting to Overwatch League by showing that he can handle himself and that he is someone to, you know, take seriously in all respects of the game, inside the game and outside.
For sure, yeah. I mean, as much as we meme about him here, it would be nice to see a player of that caliber come back and be in tip-top shape. But
yeah.
Kyle, the mention of him literally caused you to run away in terror. What are your thoughts on the thought of Defran maybe coming back?
I think it's I want to be cautious with this. Like, I think that it would be really, really cool to see him back in the scene. I think he's a phenomenal player. I think he was literally the best soldier player in the world. But even still, that soldier's not meta. He's still a phenomenal tracer player. He can play a lot of DPS to a really high level. I think maybe in a year or two, I can see him, if he maintains a proper trajectory, making it to OWL and being a pretty decently, you know, played player. I think an academy team is probably his best bet. I think an academy team with a strong coach is also his best bet. There are some academy teams who seem to be run more by the players than by like one, you know, really strict head coach. And I think that is not the type of team for him, because he has definitely this mentality that, you know, you need to rein that in. You need to have someone. It's really unfortunate that, like, I wish I knew more about the contenders coaches, then I know that like the type of coach that Arrow is, where he's really disciplined on, making sure that his players are professional. This is a job, treat it like a job. As long as there are coaches and contenders who are of that same mindset, I would be not very surprised if I saw him join a U.S. contenders team or a North American contenders team. Probably for Atlanta, I wouldn't be super surprised because Brad generally likes to pick players that he knows for things, and
True.
there's a possibility for a two-way contract there as well eventually.
True. That would definitely be an interesting and a very interesting use of the two-way contract as well in that case. But Mel, last words here on Defran making a maybe triumphant return to competitive Overwatch.
Well, I think the rumors are that he's looking at the expansion teams, like wanting to actually be in the Overwatch League, not in the academy teams. But again, everything's rumors, so who knows, right? I guess my thoughts are there's not a chance in hell I would put him on an Overwatch League team. There's just not. I mean, the immaturity he showed, the instability he showed, the effects that Al had on all the players season 1 were tremendous. And even the ones that were very mentally stable, it was really hard. So putting somebody who says they're better but haven't been put in that stressful situation is just hearsay at this point. So I think he's got to prove himself, kind of like Kai, right? He's got to prove himself to a point that shows that he has changed, that shows that he can work with a team, that shows that he's still got the skills that he had at one time, right? I haven't watched his stream. I'm sure Blevins is really caught up on it, so maybe he can fill us in, but
Absolutely not.
But I think that he's got a lot to prove still, and I think his popularity in streaming is kind of pushed him to this point of saying, I should do this, but I don't know how much is coming from actually a want inside to do this or a thought that he should do this. And I think if he goes in and he crashes and burns, nobody's gonna look at that coach like they had any sense in the world, right? Any coach is taking a big chance.
I think the only way that he'll be on a team is if his manager at McDonald's is also on the team as the head coach. Well,
he's got to be on Mayhem then.
There you go. But that is going to bring us to the end of round number 2. Quick recap of the scores here. We've got Kyle actually pulling ahead here with 45 points. Mushu slightly behind with 44, and a tie at the back of the pack between Mel and Volamel with 42 apiece. But still anyone's game as we go into the final round here, round number 3.
The payload is approaching its destination.
So we got a tweet earlier from Mistakes of the Boston Uprising, and he says, I don't think that a player who loses the motivation to play the game should be in the Overwatch League. So we'll start it with you, MooshuBeef. Are you buying or selling that tweet by Mistakes?
Man, it's one way or the other, right? I'm gonna say then I'm gonna buy it. Okay. But just as a quick follow up, it's because you need to be able to stay motivated. So I think what's important distinction is it's not saying if you lose motivation, you don't deserve to be in Overwatch League. It's you must remain or must be able to stay motivated. And so within that, you can still like lose motivation and like you're just going to go above and below that line, right? Of how you're feeling on that. And that's because everyone's human, right? And so, but you need to be able to motivate yourself and have that be something sustainable that you can lean on. And so I think that's what separates the players that are going to make it and who won't make it.
Makes a lot of sense. And I forgot to mention this for those of you who are new to the show. This is the buy or sell round. Buy means agree, sell means disagree. I know it's rocket science sometimes, but I always end up confusing myself. So Kyle, what do you think? Buy or sell Mistakes tweet about motivation?
It's weird. I kind of don't 100% understand exactly what he means by this, but I think that I kind of will buy this. I think that like obviously if a player is like not motivated to play the game anymore, they shouldn't be getting paid to play the game anymore. I think that it also comes down to the way, like, if you are burnt out of the game, you either should have probably been able to see that from beforehand, or you're not doing a good enough job of maintaining a good like work-life balance. Like I know there's quite a number of players, like there's certain players that we see stream all the time, even when the season was going, they were still grinding on ladder. And then there's certain players who I've never ever seen in any other streamers game ever. Like I've never seen Coolmat play in a ranked game ever. And so I would assume that he's kind of one of those players that either plays on Smurfs all the time and we have no idea, or he seems to maintain a pretty good amount of work-life balance and doesn't get burnt down on the game because he doesn't play it all the time. He gives 100% in scrims and is, present with his team. But like when it's time to go home, he goes home and watches Netflix and kind of will, not burn himself out on the game and maintain a longer career. And I think that as long as players do that, they 100% deserve to play the game. I don't think you should force players to grind ladder after they are done scrimming for 10 hours. Yeah.
Definitely can feel that sentiment for sure. Mel, what do you think? Buy or sell? What Mistakes had to say?
I'll buy it just because I think I understand what he's saying. It's my understanding this is part of a longer interview with Esports Heaven. So like he answered one question and they asked him about burnout and motivation loss. And I think that distinguishing between those two is very important. I think that you can't just say burnout and motivation loss are exactly the same, because motivation is just what drives you to do something, right? And you can still be motivated to help your team while burn out on the game. And I think that if you have that, then you are still a valuable player, right? There's a lot of things that can cause burnout, whether it's working too hard, whether it's having to learn a lot of new players, and I think Mistakes out of anybody was a player thrown into a situation and said, hey, I'd like you to learn how to play da 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 da. Even though you didn't think you were going to start, now you are. So here you go.
Yeah.
And I think that those are the types of things that we need to make that distinction between. And that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to say that you can be stressed out, you can be burnout, but losing the motivation to help your team win is inexcusable. And I agree with that. So I buy that.
That putting it that way definitely makes me agree a lot more. Volamel, last words here. Buying or selling? What Mistakes said here?
Gotta buy it. I think it's a kind of a harsh lesson that people have had to learn, especially players in this season. When you're thrust into a position that demands you to be at 100% at all times, if you waver from that, there are going to be people who are motivated to capture your spot. It's just how competitive fields like this tend to work. I think it's fine to waver in motivation, but if you completely, like Mushu said, if you bottom out with motivation and you find yourself not in love with the game anymore, then it's probably your time to kind of hang it up for a respectable amount of time. So I have to say that I think the guests did a great job, and I literally have no other points. So hats off to them.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think that. I mean, it probably wasn't immediately or specifically calling him out, but that quote made me think of Effect from Dallas Fuel, and I'm like, the implications of that. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about it, but I hope everyone involved makes an informed decision and it works out the best for everyone. But we're going to move on here. This is actually going to be our last question here, and it wasn't originally made as a meme question, but looking back, it really kind of is the meme question here. But we are going to have this one be the last one because of time. We did have I don't know if this was like a leaked document or so. It was on Reddit, so it's obviously 100% true. But we had a leaked document. It was like an investor document for Activision that says a prediction or a leak that at BlizzCon, there will be several significant launch announcements, including Diablo 4, which has nothing to do with us, a Blizzard mobile title, either Diablo or Warcraft, which has nothing to do with us. But what's important here is that it also says a possible Overwatch expansion. So the question here is, are you buying or selling us ever seeing an expansion or something that would be significant enough in Overwatch to be released and called an expansion in some capacity? Kyle, we'll start with you.
I'm going to buy that. I think that Blizzard has data on how many people played Uprising and whatever the Retribution, I think it was. And I would very much think it would be something along those lines, if anything. I don't think it would be very beneficial for them to like do a whole new PvP, Overwatch 2, anything along those lines. I feel like it would be, they're probably going to have a second smaller team kind of dedicated to some sort of, side. It's like I don't think it'll be a separate full game, but it'll be like maybe they're going to just put more effort and have these kind of playable mini adventures on the side as kind of a more consistent thing, other than like once every 4 months for like 2 weeks you get to play a thing.
Yeah, that actually makes sense. I wasn't thinking about that. Mel, what do you think? Buy or sell us seeing a quote Overwatch expansion?
Well, I'm gonna buy because I'm gonna be there. So of course I want this to happen. But I think I agree with Kyle in that I think that not only are we gonna get just these game modes that are more story based, but I think we're gonna get a story mode. Right. And I think, I'm obviously not the first person to say that, so it's not my original idea, but I think that that would be an expansion that we could see at BlizzCon. I think we could see something where there's this whole separate mode where you kind of get more information about these characters based on the shorts that we've already seen.
Yeah, that would definitely be interesting. Volamel, buying or selling the Overwatch expansion?
That's a big buy from me, my doggy. I'm pretty familiar with Blizzard games. I've kind of grown up on them. And Blizzard's stance on expansions are that they love them and they like to do them quite a lot with a lot of their games. And to the point of the esports side of things, when it comes to Overwatch, when the rumors were coming out that these investors are investing so much money, I couldn't help but wonder, if we were to see this game have a very nice long career as an esports title that had to have been revamped, refurbished, and kind of repurposed in a way, while also adding new things along the way. And if you monetize that, it kind of again looks like an expansion or just a new title on top of it. So if an investor has sold, a 5 to 10 year deal, I don't think the Overwatch engine is going to last 5 to 10 years. So improving on that little by little, year by year, you could see a 10-year-old esport potentially. So I it's a big buy for me.
Interesting. I was not expecting these answers coming out from you guys, but those are good. Mushu, last words here. Buying or selling the Overwatch expansion?
I'm not only buying it, I'm buying the thing that's selling me it. So I'm like buying the thing that's also selling this to other people who are being asked to buy or not. So basically, I agree with all the points that have been brought up before, specifically like Volamel talking about longevity of the esport. How do you do that? Talking about I forget who mentioned it, but it was about like the data around the uprising and just the other PvE stuff coming out. What a better way to create more fans of your game? Which, by the way, I would be I'd be shocked if more than 50% of the player base actually care about the esports side of Overwatch. I'd be very surprised about that. I'm fairly certain that, especially if you just look at it for actually, you just take those numbers of r/Overwatch versus competitive Overwatch. r/Overwatch has 1.5 million subscribers, and all they like watch the only content that really comes out of there are gifs of awesome plays. So people love it for the game itself. And is there even 200K in competitive Overwatch, the subreddit?
It's roughly
right? So it's
somewhere.
It's significantly lower, right? The people that care about the esports side, and all the investment has been going there. And even just talking to people who watch Overwatch and who cosplay and who are brought into this game that is an esport, but is also a game that has super strong lore, super strong storylines. These are things that people love, right? And have brought in people that normally wouldn't care for a first-person shooter, but now are engaged because of these stories. So 100%, like there's gonna be a movie eventually. There's gonna be a story mode that develops the lore, right? We don't need to only have these short films that are announced at BlizzCon and whatnot. They should be a whole like story mode where all of that lore is explored, so people can have that and really love that and share over those experiences. Because PvE, especially just thinking about like if with PvE, you're probably playing it with, where I know myself personally, I'm playing PvE with people differently. Or with other people as well who I don't normally queue up with comp with, because it's like, hey, let's have some fun. I know you play may not be like the best at the game, but like let's play together because it's fun, right? Like we're friends in real life, and I know you really like Overwatch, and I'm super into it, but I know you would love to play this too.
So wait, that's why people keep inviting me to play when those things come out and not during comp? Ah, jeez.
You weren't supposed to tell him.
Ah,
Hey,
Come
come on, you gotta
on.
be
Debated.
transparent, you know.
debated.
That's how you know we care about you as a friend. We're
True.
letting you know these things.
True.
Yeah.
I just want to point out that whoever mentioned Overwatch Battle Royale was immediately going to get 50 points. So
No, I was gonna say it. Oh,
Yep.
if I said it, if I was the first person, I was literally gonna
You were
start
gonna-
by saying Battle Royale.
you're gonna get it.
Oh.
You're gonna get it. It's okay. That's gonna bring us to the end of the normal rounds here. That of course means that we're going to cut to our top 2. So we have in 4th place Volamel, 51 points.
Ooh.
He had a good run, but he
What?
wasn't quite there. In 3rd place with 52 points, unfortunately, Mel didn't make the cut. Taking the question off did not help, unfortunately, for you. But it was a good effort. But that means that we have Mr. Forever 2nd place himself, KyleWynn, and the newcomer, MooshuBeef, in the finals as we go into the final
payload
question
is
here.
approaching its destination.
And this final question works a little bit differently than the other questions. Each of you are going to get a chance to answer the same exact question. You're going to make your points, and there's no points being given out. It is straight up someone wins and someone loses. Now, this is going to work where now Mel and Volamel each get their vote to choose who they agree with here for your answer. And then if it's a tie between them, then it comes back to me and I make the final decision. But let's jump in here. And this one's easy. All you have to do. We have the 8 expansion teams locations announced, but what we don't have are the names of those actual teams. So you are tasked with coming up with a good name for one of those expansion teams. With the flip of this coin, it is going to Beef. You get to go first.
My first.
You're first.
So who's judging us? Is Volamel and
It's Volamel and Melarina are making
Mel?
the original judgment, and if
All right.
they can't come to a unanimous agreement, then it comes to me.
So this is kind of like what's the game? Cards Against Humanity, right? I just gotta
Little
make a name
bit.
that they like.
There
Okay.
you go.
All right,
Play
I'm
to
gonna
your
go.
audience.
I'm gonna go with the Toronto Pterodactyls. All right, so here's
Ooh.
why. All right, I'm not gonna admit that it's because it's the only idea I have in my head right now. But the other thing I'm gonna say is that the Toronto Raptors are already a team that is probably one of the best sports franchises in Toronto. In terms of recent success, I gave that weird face because I'm trying to think about, have the Maple Leafs done anything good? Have the Blue Jays done anything? But so I wanna stay with the dinosaur theme, right? I think everyone loves dinosaurs. Who doesn't love dinosaurs? Talk about like, why is Rugrats so popular? It's because of the dinosaur, because of Reptar. And so and in that, right, you talk about pterodactyls, right? You cover the dinosaur, but you also have the bird. The bird is something that can fly. It's a huge theme across sports in general. People love the thought of being able to fly and flying above the rest of the pack. There's a lot of pun opportunities there. A lot of
True.
things you can do as fans to do a pterodactyl. And let's be honest. Like, while it wouldn't be nice to have someone do a pterodactyl sound behind you, if you're in a group of people all making pterodactyl noises, that probably probably could be pretty fun. So I'm for those reasons, I'm going to go with Toronto Pterodactyls.
Very interesting choice for sure. Kyle, your pick here.
See, the Toronto Pterodactyls is cool, but then you have to throw a P before Toronto, which is kind of like, if you want to maintain cohesiveness, you have to. But I'm gonna go with the real meme answer here, the Toronto Onto. That is the. No, I'm kidding.
Oh,
I'm not doing
I'm like,
Toronto
man,
Onto. Are you kidding me? No. I think I would love to see some cool like Frost or Stormy kind of teams, so like the Toronto Frost, Toronto Storm, or something to do with like a Blizzard or something. Without you can't do Blizzard, but like something along those lines would be sick, because we have I like the teams who kind of pay homage to their localities, and Canada's cold and all that kind of jokes. So I think something like that would be sick, and you have a lot of opportunity for some cool blue branding, some like icy blues, stuff like that. I'd just love to see something like that.
So what is your official name?
I'm going
of
with the Toronto Frost.
Ooh. Okay, so you both. I wasn't sure if I was gonna lean towards the pander bear or not, but you both pandered to me. But you had to make it through a layer first. So Mel, who are you picking here? Are you picking the Toronto pterodactyls or the Toronto Frost?
I will say, Kyle, if you would have picked anything other than Toronto, I probably would have given it to you here. But I think I got to go with Toronto Pterodactyls. The explanation was better.
So one vote for Mushu, Volamel. It could potentially come down to you here. Who are you going with?
So as Mushu was sitting at the director's table, selling me on his pitch of the Toronto Rontos, I was wavering. He insults my favorite Sunday morning cartoon and Rugrats, telling me that Reptar beats Angelica Pickles. You're wrong. I'm sorry. Your opinion's false.
Are the
And then he
Rugrats so
goes in-
popular? What is
Hey man, Nick at Night's a thing. Get at me.
Right?
So it was wavering. Toronto Pterodactyls was it's creative at least. We'll see what Kyle's got, and then he bottoms out with the insults at Rugrats, and then I hear Kyle's, and it's kind of wishy washy, and he's like a fan of snow or something, like he likes to shovel or use the snow blower. No creativity whatsoever. So I'm going with the Toronto Pterodactyls.
Well,
Sorry, Kyle.
ultimate
Second again, buddy.
slam.
You tried, kind
Oh
of.
no, maybe this was my exact plan. Maybe I wanted to.
Oh, the long game.
we got
You fooled me, my
debated.
good sir.
We got
reputation
debated.
that I have on this show. I needed to have an underwhelming answer, so
Well
I
then.
this forever.
Well
Well,
done. Well played,
What
sir.
I will say is that even if Volamel didn't pick you, it was going to be very hard for me not to pick that, because within arm's reach, I have multiple pieces of Toronto Raptors gear on me. So the
But do you
Pander
have
Bear
any
would have gotten there.
pterodactyls?
You don't even want to know how many pterodactyls I have. But that means that we do have ourselves a victor. That, of course, is
You've captured
MooshuBeef.
the objective.
The
Well
floor
done.
is yours. Sell out, shout out, do what you will
Ooh.
with your time.
All right. Wow. Thank you to the Academy. I did not expect. Do I have a word? Think for this award. It honestly means a lot. I think, it's just me up here, but there's a whole team behind me, behind the scenes, that not behind the screen curtain, but I mean out in out in the world. No, but seriously, shout outs. Yeah, I mean, I think why I'm here and why people may or may not listen to me is because of a group of really hardworking people. And so thanks to everyone who helped make BroadcastGG possible. I would be, if I try to do everything that is being output now, A, it would be low quality, and B, I'd be dead because it wouldn't be possible for me to do it on my own. And of course, like, huge shout out to Volamel as well, as like a big part of it as we grow out like the analyst side right here. And to, just a bunch of people who are believing in just wanting to put out content that we feel would help create more fans. And because we love the game, and we all want to tell people about it, just got together and made it happen. And there's a lot of really hard work that allowed us to get to this point. It's still a long road to go, but I'm excited to see where we end up. So if you haven't already, follow broadcast.gg. Got to spell it out, DOT in the middle, GG. So there you go. I'm off my box now.
There we go. Great sellout. I'm just curious here, between Mel and Volamel, who are you guys? What were you guys going to pick if you guys had made it to the finals for the team? I'm just curious here. If you all would have gone with the Pander Bear of Toronto.
Mel, would you like to go
Nope.
first?
No, you go ahead.
Well, when we did our fantasy draft, I don't know if the Blevins had partaken in listening to that VOD, but I went with the Chengdu Spider Monkeys.
Ooh,
Wow, I really
that's
like
strong. That is strong.
Very nice. I was going to go with the Atlanta Aimbots, but,
Man.
it wouldn't
So
actually make it in.
I think the one thing that we can leave this episode with knowing is that no matter what happened in the finals, Kyle was definitely getting second place. But that is going to be the end of Around the Payload. Thanks, everyone, for listening. For Mel, for Volamel, for Kyle, and for our newly crowned champion, MooshuBeef, I am the Blevins, and we will catch you guys next week or in 2 weeks around the Payload. Bye-bye.
Bye.